BIP of Bizarre Interest Productions, and I've had Kamen Rider on the brain for a little bit, so as part of this plan of videos I've ready to make, I've come across a bit of a question that someone had posted back on our Kamen Rider memes. Are there any characters that can make a 5-man band in Kamen Rider? Basically, the 5-man trope was typically seen as a lineup where 5 characters can be placed in a set role on the team. The leader, Hero Paragon, that leads everyone or is basically the face of the team. Then you have the Lancer, who is essentially the second in command or the rival or the aloof guy who works with the team but barely likes to accept the fact that he's part of the team, though he or she are clearly our members of the team and are just really sucky at admitting it, and usually have the most tension or chemistry or rivalry or most intense feelings towards the leader. Then you have the big guy who's actually the muscle or the most boisterous, combative, and headstrong of the group. Then you have the smart guy who's typically the genius or on a team of specialists. They're usually the scientist, sociologist, tech expert, or at least the most knowledgeable one or the idea guy. And then there's the heart, usually the most compassionate ones on the team who try to keep everyone together, be the optimistic one or the one that cheers people up if the hero can't do it. The issue is, and part of the reason why this trope used to be something fun to do on TV tropes until they started having more extreme moderation to the point where there's barely any examples on the main page, is that in some cases it can be really hard to distinguish which member fits where, to the point where some people can argue it's pigeonholing some casts. I don't 100% agree with that, which is why outside of TV tropes, more people kind of just do it either way regardless. But I'm not going to lie, some people do try to bend the rules a bit too much. So my challenge is I'm going to have to try to have a group of 5 unique people and try to match them closely with the archetypes as best as I can. The hero, the lancer, the big guy, the smart one, and the heart, and 6 rangers too if possible, I will mention. I think I'm going to work my way in reverse for this one, and I haven't seen enough of Showa or Kuga and Agito to be fair, though I could make the argument if you could make a 5-man band in Agito's case, it'd be Suichi and Agito as the hero, Hikawa G3 as a lancer since he's kind of the rider with his head on straight the most in the show, Gills as the big guy since he's the most feral, another Agito as the smart guy since Kaoru, and another Agito medical doctors and can perform surgeries, with Mana as the heart, and Suichi's kind of love interest that helps the others out as she gives ties to the Agito mystery, but let me know if I'm off base with that. Let's start with Dragon Knight, because the team of heroes and Ryuki active at the same time is a bit of a stretch, but we've got 2 power trios and 2 allies. Now, who's a leader and lancer between Kit and Len, Dragon Knight, and Wing Knight is debatable since Len's basically the command of the forces of good, but he is kind of pushing Kit as a proper hero. Meanwhile, Kit is a protagonist who's got an edge to him, but it's ultimately a good person. Though considering the circumstances, I would say Len would be the leader with Kit as the more likable lancer, since the more experienced mentoring the new recruit is basically like Anakin and Ahsoka in the Clone Wars if Ahsoka was the main protagonist. Now, as for the big guy, well, they had Chris, who was a Marine, but his asthma combined with the fact he got vented some episodes after joining the heroes kind of left them alone without a muscle, but we did get someone to replace him in Case, who Raph confirmed and claimed was the strongest fighter, or maybe even stronger than Len, and we saw was able to take on Axe, Strike, and Raph on her own at different intervals and was able to back them up in fights. Next up is Trent, who's a smart guy because he was smart enough to join the No Men and with help hacked them in order to find Kit in the first place when they took him. And then there's Maya as the heart and as a journalist. So she has aspects of both the smart person and the compassionate one, given she's helped Kit, she's got Trent help her out, bonded with Case, and her relationship has helped soften Len out to be more open. Plus, this was basically a group of 5 by the time Case and Kit resolved their tension, and Lacey had taken more of a backseat anyway. I skipped 5 because they're a group of 7, and who's the big guy and smart guy in that group of therapy seekers is kind of hard to figure out. But Blade is a maybe. Kizaki/Blade is definitely a hero. Chalice is the Lancer since the story arc and reason to fight with and against the heroes is a constant point of contention. Tachibana-san's the smart guy. Wait, I need to say that right. Tachibana-san's the smart guy. He's got the most experience with board, and Mitsuki would be the big guy since his goal of being the strongest is tied with his base form being the strongest of the 4, and him being a high schooler being able to keep up with adults. Then I guess Shiori would be the heart, a balanced scientist, mission control, and a bossy caring team mom. But then there's Kotaro too, who I guess would be the group's tag-along kid in this case, so Next is O's, and this one I'm not only sure about this because while it fits, these guys weren't active enough for it to count from what I've seen from O's, so let me know if I'm wrong there. Eiji's naturally going to be the hero, Ank's the Lancer always fighting with him but still being his ally, and Hina's the heart naturally. Dante's a doctor, so he's the closest thing to the smart guy on the field, and Goto's naturally the bruiser of the group, using any arsenal he can get his hands on even when he's not being birthed. So, Forze's got, like, way more than 6 people, so I guess Wizard would be the next close option. Haruto is a leader and a hero, clearly. Shunpei's his best friend, so he'd be the Lancer. Rinko's a policewoman and can fight better than everyone else save for Haruto, so she's a muscle. Wajima's the smart one as the ringmaker. And Kiyomi's the heart, mission control, always trying to lift Haruto out of his darkest hour. And Beast would be the 6th ranger of the group, since until Mayu becomes mage, he's the only consistent magic fighting ally the group has. Makes sense too. In a series with only one writer for a while, the secondary writer is traditionally seen as the Sixth Ranger anyway. I was about to jump to X8, but crap, Ghost works too. Once the Fukami siblings rejoined the fight, you got Taku as a hero, Akari's a smart girl and the character Taku should have ended up with, Onari's basically Taku's handler and a spiritual and sense member, so he'd be Taku's lancer, while Makoto would be the muscle since he's physically the best fighter out of the five, and Kanon's the heart since all of them care about her and their situation to some degree. Now we can move on to X8 because we technically have two alterations. Damn it, I should have put that before Wizard, that joke would have been perfect! Anyway, between the time Kiryu and Emu managed to get the writers to work together permanently to beat Gem, they would have been a five-man band of Emu as the hero leader, Hiro the Lancer, Taiga the Muscle, Kiryu the Smart One, and Poppy the Heart, but Kuroto kills him, then Nico joins as a tag-along ally, and then Kuroto returns, he becomes the Smart One, and later Kiryu becomes the Sixth Ranger. Funny how things work out. For build, we've got the team Nasita. Sento's clearly the hero, Ryuga's the hot-blooded best friend / Lancer, Kazumi's the big guy, who with his base form being the strongest and able to keep up with the others even after the upgrades. Misora's the compassionate heart, using her idol form to help her get information. Sora's the smart one as their espionage and info gatherer. Plus, she has a lot of ties with a lot of people now that I think about it. And Gentoku's naturally their Sixth Ranger. For Saber, we're not gonna go with the main group from the first arc because there's way too many members, but what we're gonna do is do what Saber did with its twists. Use Toma's rebellion he forged halfway through the Traitor arc. That leaves Toma as a hero and Mei's the heart. But no one found it intentional that once Yuri helps Toma against the Sword of Logos, he immediately becomes Togo's new Lancer in place of Rintaro, with him diving deeper into the lore of the world and guiding Togo to be his ally and understand Reika better against both groups, with Toma having to both recruit Ryo as his big guy after beating him, and Tetsuo as a smart guy, since both of them give him a challenge of him having to improve his strength with the sword, while also his own sword expertise. Meanwhile, Rintaro has to rewrite his story into fighting Toma to properly join him again as their Sixth Ranger, before Kento ends up returning Sophia to them. All kind of makes sense with the story about stories. For Revice, it depends, but regarding the Phoenix Riders and allies, Ikki's a clear hero and face of the team. Vice or Daiji, you could consider the Lancer depending on if you count Vice as a part of Ikki, because depending on how people go about it, they usually put Ikki as the leader and Vice as the Lancer, or Ikki as a hero, Vice as a Lancer, and Daiji as the smart guy, since he's the planner of the team, but George is the scientist of the group, so I would put George as a smart guy. Hiromi's a big guy and a passionate fighter, pushing himself with the Geno mixes that's able to hurt everyone else. Well, anyone, but he still pushes through it anyway. And Sakura is a compassionate sibling who wants to help out her brothers, so perfect fit there. For Geats, well, the four are obvious. Ace is the hero, Kei was the less mature but better-natured Lancer, Neon's a sweetheart, and Buff is the big guy. Samura is a bit of a supportive ally in the group, but for Smart Guy, this one was kind of hard since a lot of the people that could be associated with that either turned out to be villains like Daichi, but Check actually wouldn't be a bad fit. He is the one with the most knowledge on the DGP and uses that to help them out in the Desire and Genesis arcs anyway, so he works. Heck, for Geats, I can actually do this with the Genesis arc villains align. Suo's still the big bad, Jit's the dragon as his extension, Bebera is the brute, because Girl has two forms and is the most sadistic of the bunch, Kekra is the manipulator and schemer, leaving Samas as a dark woman in it for the job. For Gotchard, I'm surprised this one wasn't obvious or considered, but like, Hotaro is clearly the leader and hero of the Kitchen Ichinose Alliance, Renee's the Lancer and the straight-laced one who tries to keep everyone's heads on straight, even though at times she's kind of the one that's too serious. Spanner's the muscle and the big guy with the most combat experience as a combat alchemist, and I know someone's gonna argue he wasn't a member, but he is an ally, and he did join them technically the moment he got his head back on straight. Sabimaru's clearly the smart guy and has made devices to help out, and Renge's the heart. She's straight chemis and has Hotaro's energy, but at a much lower level, cheers up Renee and has her bond with Tabi. Technically, Kyoka and Minato are mentors and allies, though you could count either them or Lachesis as Six Rangers respectively. As for Gav, we got the Granite Hunters, Shoma's the hero, Hanto's the Lancer, Lakia's Kiryu the muscle, Dente is their intelligent strategist, and Sachika, to no one's surprise, is the hearts. As for the Stomach family, this is why it's kinda hard to do villains. Longo's the big bad, Jeep the dragon, Nelv the smart one, Glauda's a brute, and Sita's a chick. Only problem is, they're not all active with these roles at the same time when it's just the five of them. Jeep and Sita are basically elite mooks in the first arc, and even with the shakeup, Boka's the big bad, Jeep and Lizelle are co-dragons, Jit's the brute, Nel's the smart one, and Longo's reduced to a worker with Glauda, so I guess she's the chick, but what does that make Longo? So, it's kinda hard. But I did find another villain group that works that's also associated with family. Technically, the Sonozaki's work. They had Ryubi as the leader, Saikyo as a dragon, Isaka as a genius, Wakana as a dark chick, and Mick as the brute. Remember, Natsuko was technically the dragon when Sako organized everything, but remember, he died halfway through, so she kind of took more control afterwards. But that's all I got for now. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and BIP of Productions, signing off.